Bonsai World. Patricia O'Connor and Frida Reba Darcy is around here. And today on the bonsai balcony, I've been meaning to bring that in. On the bonsai balcony, we're going to hang out on our balcony, and we are going to do a little cleanup on our bald cypress compilation while I dole out per diem to my partner in crime. There you go. There you go. There you go. Okay. All right. You can have that one too. It's fine. Today, what I'm going to do is go through here and clean all of this up a little bit. It's gotten it. I have to do that a couple of times a year, and I'm on a little stool bench that that I bought at work. I think it's very handy. It's got rollers, and I have an assortment of tools I've got standing by. I've got a couple of pair of pruners and a couple of pair of scissors and a couple of weenie skewers. I meant to get some bamboo. That's okay. I've got some lesser pieces of bamboo within arm's reach if I need them. I've got Frida standing by just out of sight. Now, what I'm going to do first is go through here, and I'm going to pick up all of the lumps of biogold that are still pick-upable. If they're broken down so much that they just kind of come apart, I'll leave them be. But everything that's fairly intact, I'm just going to gather up, and I'm going to put on that little on my small little table just inside the door. Just inside the doors in arm's reach. We've also got a lot of clover in here, and we are also going to talk. The conversation while I'm doing this weeding will probably bounce back and forth between cypress trees and methods of good moss growth. One thing I already know that I will probably venture slightly off camera to grab in a minute is one of my colanders. I have seen in the columns, and I was looking a little while ago at some of the questions that I had missed during our live performance. Sometimes I get going a little bit on what I'm doing, and questions will pop up and go, and I won't see them. I got to get better about that. I don't mean to ignore anybody. But I'd seen where, in a couple of conversations I'd missed a lot, people were asking me to do close-ups on the maples that we were working on, and I just totally didn't see that. And at one point I was people were asking several questions, and then one of our viewers came in, and I just totally, amongst all the lines of questions, I just totally didn't see their, so I can get better about that. But I was looking through at some of the questions that I'd missed, and I saw where you guys were discussing moss and your luck with moss. So I haven't really had that much of an issue with moss in the past. When I first got into bonsai, I thought it was a must. I thought moss was a must. And I also thought that we were all doing the same thing. We were trying to get mosses to look like a field of grass at the base of a pretty tree. And the size and the texture of the moss next to some trees does lend itself in scale well to that. So I can kind of, you can kind of see where we kind of would have that common artistic look when it comes to moss. Having long arms is a big help for this. This is a fairly large planter, but I have a rake that's just like Yeah, I have a reach that a boxer would love. 6'2" this way. We think Uncle Bobo may have been an orangutan. We're not really sure. So what I'm doing now is I'm going through and I'm picking up all of our mosses. And the weird things about mosses is it's so highly regarded in bonsai. I mean, for all of the stuff that we want to keep so neat and so tidy and so manicured, uh, moss is and has for a long time been quite a big deal. And when it comes time for the huge bonsai shows, people work feverishly. They will take the tree that's going into a show, and they will maybe rent a pot just for the show. You know, they're going to go to some place and get this really exotic, this really famous, maybe cool old bonsai pot. It may be an ancient piece, or it may be a piece made by some known artist, but everybody's going to the gala with their best, and people will take their perfectly good bonsai trees and repot them just before a show with a pot that doesn't belong to them, that they're paying rent for, and that they will return at the end of the rental, which is at the end of the show, basically. And so it's going to get potted right back. And that all just strikes me as wild. But the other thing they'll do is they'll go through and pick up all the moss, and then they'll go and buy moss. Because part of the treatment of the trees and all the stuff that they're going to want to do means that they kind of want to rake everything back and manicure everything to the very best they can. And in so doing, you kind of put yourself in a situation where you are then starting off with a clean slate. And that doesn't mean then that you go driving around all the parks with a paint scraper trying to scoop up all the moss you can get. There are businesses that are set up on the side just to do that. I mean, that's probably not their own source of income, but there are bonsai shops and stuff that would specialize in moss, and you would go by there and you would pick out, trays and sheets of the different mosses, and then you would cut those out into little patterns and sew and lay those in. You'd cut them out into little patterns like you were sewing, and just lay those in. So, moss is you get the idea that it's aesthetically a fairly big deal, not to be taken lightly. But it also has its purposes. It helps to percolate the soil, which is to say that it helps to keep a solid stream of water carving a path of least resistance through your pot, creating air pockets. It acts like pouring water through a piece of sponge, to where on the back side of that it comes out like it's just been going through a jet in your faucet, right? It comes out really soft looking. Not really soft looking, really soft feeling. And that's, oxygenated more. So not only does it do that, but it keeps the soil stays a little moist a little longer. Should have gotten my colander. I'm just going to do this. It helps to keep your soil moist longer. It kind of hedges against on the side of less evaporation instead of more. And it aids in facilitating mycorrhiza, so I've been told, which I believe too. I think that probably helps there. The sunlight the sunlight and my artificial light are blasting the surface blasting the surface of the earth basically with ultraviolet. And that is kind of like anti-antiseptic. It's kind of like alcohol or something. That's just going to just nuke the top of the soil and kill all the germs and stuff. Well, you want that biosphere just below there to be thriving. And if they get up there and have this area that's a dead zone for them, then to have an umbrella over that would kind of be a good thing. So something exists there that stays green and photosynthesizes and has a completely different reaction to the light. And in that way, there's not a dead zone at the top of your soil or your substrate for which all your little microbes go to die. You filled that area with something that's beneficial to you and the tree and to them. Now I'm going through and I'm picking up this moss. You see the stuff that I don't want. I'm throwing the weeds on the floor here because it's a concrete floor and I'm vacuuming this up. But I am throwing my moss off to the side uphill. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm not going to go back down with it in patches. But what I will do is to do things that will facilitate a better coverage of moss over the whole thing. And what that is I will take all of these lumps of moss that I've collected from up here, and then after I've collected them all, I'll put them in a colander, and I will add to them more moss, but not the moss like this. I'll add to them peat moss. And if I can put one of those in a little, like a pecan grinder or something, one of those little things that you could put peanuts in and grind and chop up for cooking. If I could run it through something like that, that would probably be ideal, but I never think to buy one of those when I'm out. So what I normally do is just take my colander and I take an equal amount of moss, both my moss and the sphagnum moss or peat moss. I add equal amounts of both into the colander, and then I just wreck it through the mesh. I just wreck that stuff into, I just kind of tear it up. And if you let it dry out, really, really dry, that's fine. And that makes it easier to do. So let this lump maybe sit for a few days and let it dry out really good. And then mix that with my peat moss, equal parts. Tear it up in that strainer as if that strainer were like a garbage disposal or something. And then take that layer and go back over the whole thing with it. And that's how you get a good layer of moss. And if you start with a little bit of stuff, like if you find that it's not going really well on your tree, sometimes we'll go outside and collect moss and we'll come in and put it on our trees and it won't do well there. It was doing well where you found it, but what you're asking of it is a little too different. But if you see that little lump that started volunteering there, even though that might not be the most moss in the world, that's your stuff that's already decided that your growing environment was suitable for it. And that would be if you can stand that. I'm not talking about the weeds that we pull, but I'm talking about the moss. If you can stand that, then maybe increase the peat moss or the sphagnum moss content a little bit, so that that little bit of moss you have will help you cover a greater area, and then go back over with all of that. I'm finding a third ingredient in here. There's moss, there's weeds, so that's two, and pat hair. I've been pulling an awful lot. These trees are a little grubby, but that all might not be pat hair. I guess that could be. No, that's pat hair. I don't have any dogs that are that shaggy. They're grabby. They are a little grabby. Also, later on in the spring when it fills out and is so pretty, you can't walk through here without grabbing your sleeve or your coat, the hem of your coat or something. And this guy gets out there a little like, and I like it that way. I don't like it grabbing my clothes, but that happens because it's so big and pretty, and that's something we can live with. These are these three guys are bald cypress, sometimes referred to as swamp cypress, Taxodius thichum. Ancient trees. These guys, I've said this before, predate insects. So a lot of our coal deposits, which insects, the creation of insects, marked a time in Earth's evolution. Prior to that, when a tree fell, it laid there on top of the hundreds of year-old trees that had fallen before it. The ground would have been fairly littered, and they may rot eventually, but there wasn't anything to break them down. All of those things hadn't evolved yet. And that's a time in Earth's history that where our coal deposits come from. And so a lot of the coal deposits, millions and millions of year-old coal deposits, were going to be dawn redwood and bald cypress and a few other species of redwoods and a few other species of trees that no longer exist. And now this planet has enough species of things that break down all that wood and fibrous stuff to where that wouldn't happen now. A lot would have to change for our planet to naturally start locking CO2 or carbon up into solid blocks of coal. That also took a lot, that was responsible for taking a lot of that carbon out of our atmosphere. So we're just going to town on this, and that's going to be a fairly large amount of moss before I'm done here. Probably just got dirt on my face. Been growing these guys now for several years. I have I have really enjoyed them. I think I've said numerous times, as projects go, this one does not have to be at a finished state for me to really enjoy. You know, this is one of those. This is one of those projects that I'm really enjoying the trip and looking forward to the destination. But I'm also, I gotta say, I've really enjoyed growing these trees so far. I think I just reduced that little bit of moss into nothing I can really pick up. That's okay. It'll still be there in just a minute when we throw the other back down. Also, I have a lot more. I have a lot more biogold to pick up over here. So at some point, when I've got the weeds, the clover, the moss, and the biogold all picked up, I'll go through here with my hemp broom, which I believe is down here below me, and I'll sweep all this down a little bit, and then we'll start trying to even it out. I'll go through here and clean up. I'll clean up some of these roots that we've unearthed by raking stuff off the top. See, all of these roots are made possible because of that moss. These are all things that weren't really growing in the akadama. These were in the moss I just pulled up. So that's all stuff that would have perished over light exposure otherwise. Now, I hadn't thought about this part yet. I need to get, okay. Just gonna scoot our little butts over here. I've got this area here to do, so I was kind of like, well, am I gonna be able to? No, I'm not gonna be able to reach through there and do that. But it's okay. So I do this about once a year. Also, I don't know, I think the camera, if I remember, the camera is pretty well focused on the base of these trees. I have one or two areas on this tree where the wood is soft. If you grow one of these and you're the kind of person that sees something wrong and you have like a piece of plastic is sticking up and you're one of those kind of people that can't stop picking at it, get over yourself. Whenever it comes to stuff like this, that's not so bad. But I had a soft spot in there. I didn't want to make a soft spot in here. On the back side, this buttress is better now. But in the past, I've noticed that it was spongy. When you see something like that, something that you can absolutely just rub on and make the wood go away, don't do that. If you can leave it alone, it may roll over. If you dig all that out, it's going to cause some big scar cavity thing. And nature does do that. It's just a matter if you like that or not. I'd rather not. If given the choice, I'd rather not. I'm not going to go. I don't think it's going to diminish my my bald cypress presentation so much if this were a big dugout hole where the wood had gotten soft. But between me who has a choice now versus me who came along and saw this tree and bought it with it like that, I would rather have the choice, and given that choice, I would rather go back with wood hardener and preserve that. At some point, you can see this is the fact. This is a saw-made cut, right? And since it's a dead piece of root right here, that's probably pretty active below the surface, but what we're looking at that's got that factory cut on it, that's not gonna round out on its own. It's dead. So what we're looking for to eventually happen there is some rollover. But in the meantime, when this thing gets planted, it'll probably be planted at a level that's more like this, all the way out, so that this much of it wouldn't be exposed. But then too, I would probably go back over that with wood hardener before I did that. If given the choice, and I saw this was paper thin, and I could just like rub it with my fingernail and dig all that out, I wouldn't do it. I would go back with wood hardener. I've seen people use wood glue as wood hardener, and I don't think, as a rule, that's a bad idea. The amount of water uptake on ball cypresses, I don't think you would get away with the wood glue. It does get dry, and it does get, when it sets up, it does get fairly hard, but I do not believe that. I think that sitting in water or prolonged watering will break down wood glue. If it's just the white wood glue, which is a stronger version basically of school glue or Elmer's glue or any of those words for glue. There are some other wood hardener, and when you open the bottle, if you ever built toy models as a kid, it smells very much like Tester's airplane glue, which I knew from my hot rod building days. Hot rod models. When I was a kid, those were some really wild car show designs started showing up, and my exposure to the 60s as a nothing-year-old was basically living them as a 10-year-old person who built plastic models of wild, unbelievable, unpractical, undrivable hot rods. But I would later learn that airplane glue has a very distinct smell, and it's what people used to do as a drug. It also just will eat your brain cells. Don't expose yourself to that without having plenty of good oxygen around. But all of that being said, it also smells like nitromethanol. So the wood hardener that I saw, when I smelled that, I went, somebody has taken some sort of resin that normally would not soak into wood, but if it did, would replace the natural resin that the tree had once had but lost. That's what happened. You get a piece of driftwood or something that's all white and bleached. All of its natural oils have been bleached out of it. It's bleached white and unprotected. So wood hardener kind of replaces those oils, and they mix it with an ingredient. I'm not going to say it's nitromethanol, but that's what it smells like to me. And that ingredient would lighten up that resinous stuff enough to where it could soak into the wood, and then being something that evaporates off very, very quickly. Nitromethanol, if you just like poured some, on a flat surface, you literally watch the little puddle disappear in front of you. It would evaporate that fast, faster than gasoline, faster than regular alcohol. So I think that's probably how that works. They dilute it enough. They take some epoxy kind of stuff and they dilute it enough to make it watery with something that will then evaporate off fairly quickly, leaving behind that resin that got farther soaked into the wood of the tree than it would have normally. So if I were going to go with a wood hardener on my Taxodium ditchum, I probably would not go with the wood glue hack, and I would probably also avoid wood hardeners that look like they were based on that principle, because the amount of watering that a bald cypress tree needs means that that stuff would be getting watered down and broken down and starting to go through the system of the tree fairly quickly. The other stuff, for all I know, it could be more toxic, but once it hardens, the tree can't eat it, I guess. And I don't know that it's toxic. People have been using it for a long time. Little bit about that. I was saying, I've seen, whenever you go to YouTube, go to the little finder section at the top of the page and type in bald cypress and push the button, and you'll see where people have just gone through and taken still shots from everybody else's videos about certain species of trees, and there are a few out there on bald cypress. You can, in the course of a 5-minute video, see 45, 50 bald cypress trees, and you'll see some of them where the people have messed with them, have dug out pieces of wood that are missing and stuff, and then I don't think that ever looks natural. But it's not uncommon to see. Okay, I am almost. No, I can do it. This comes back to that really long arm thing. Just about got all of our weeds and our indiscretions taken care of. I might have been, I can see why, but I might have been a little lax on this backside last time, which means I've got to attune. I got to attune this time. And all right, that's all of our weeds. It is, that's all of our weeds. This can't be that long of a video for talking about bald cypress trees and moss, over moss. So we're gonna call this part 1. I'm gonna get my colander, I'm gonna get some peat moss, and I'm gonna show, and then we're gonna start dressing this out. So this will be the end of part 1 on Pat doing a little landscaping on our taxodium ditching on our bald cypress trees. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Our next video will be in about 15 minutes and when I do part 2 of cleaning up my bald cypress compilation. And we'll continue this. We will continue this then. Frida will get another payoff out of that too. So that's just like a win-win for everybody. Thank you so much for watching.